أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم, picking up with the legendary stories of the prophets عليهم الصلاة والسلام. We have completed a number of prophets, including the Prophet Adam alayhi salatu wassalam, the Prophet Idris or Enoch alayhi salatu wassalam, the Prophet Nuh or Noah alayhi salatu wassalam, and the Prophet Hud alayhi salatu wassalam. We have also completed the story of the Prophet Salih and alayhi salatu wassalam, and the Prophet Ibrahim or Abraham alayhi salatu wassalam, the story of his son Ismail or Ishmael alayhi salatu wassalam, and the story of Ishaq or Isaac and Jacob alayhim salatullahi alayhi salam. We have also completed the story of Lut alayhi salatu wassalam and the Prophet Shu'aib alayhi salatu wassalam. We have completed the story of Prophet Yusuf or Joseph, and we have completed the story of Ayub or Job. We have also completed the story of Zulkifl, and we have completed the story of the dwellers of Arras and the people mentioned, or the prophets mentioned in Surah Yasin. The story of those prophets we have completed, and we have also completed the chapter number 14, the story of Jonah, story of Yunus alayhi salatu wassalam, and we have now arrived in section 1, the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salatu wassalam, the most popular story in the entire Quran. Your humble orator is Muhammad Israel, and we're just going to pick up from page number 193. The basket came to rest at the river bank, which skirted the king's palace. The palace servants found the basket with the baby and took it to the Pharaoh and his queen. When the queen beheld the lovely infant, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu instilled in her a strong love for this baby. Pharaoh's wife was a very different individual from Pharaoh, who was a disbeliever. She, on the other hand, was a believer. Pharaoh was cruel, however, she was merciful. He was a tyrant and she was a delicate and good-hearted individual. She was sad because she was infertile, however, and had hoped to have a son. Hardly had she held the baby than she kissed him. Pharaoh was much amazed when he saw his wife hugging this baby to her breast. He was much astonished because his wife was weeping with joy, something he had never seen her do before. She requested her husband, and I quote, "Let me keep the baby and let him be a son to us." End quote. Almighty Allah Jalla Jalaluhu reveals in the beloved noble Quran, and I quote, "Then the household of Pharaoh picked him up, that he might become for them an enemy and a cause of grief. Verily Pharaoh, Hamaan, and their host were sinners." And the wife of Pharaoh said, and I quote, "A comfort of the eye for me and for you. Kill him not, perhaps he may be of benefit to us, or we may adopt him as a son." End quote. And they perceive not the result of that. And some may be asking Hamaan. Who was Hamaan? Hamaan was the right-hand man to Pharaoh. Now, I think it's interesting to note people name their children Pharaoh. they want to take into consideration the name really does grow on the individual. So, and there were, of course, some, Pharaoh is the general term. They actually had individual names, and some were not as tyrannical as others. However, the main point here is that they took themselves as gods and representatives of gods, as mentioned in the prior video. So whether they were kind-hearted or whatever, because they were associating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he definitely did have a plan to give them the message of al-Islam. But let's pick up. The queen summoned a few wet nurses to suckle the baby Moses, but he would not take any of their breast. The queen was distressed and sent for more wet nurses. Musa alayhi salatu wassalam's sister, was also worried, as her baby brother was without milk for a long time. Seeing the queen's anxiety, she blurted that she knew just the mother who would suckle the child affectionately. They asked her why she was following the floating basket. She said she did so out of curiosity. Her excuse sounded reasonable, so they believed her. They ordered her to rush and fetch the woman she was talking about. Her mother also was waiting with a heavy heart, worried about the fate of her baby. Just then her daughter rushed in with the good news. Her heart lifted and she lost no time in reaching the palace. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, the Almighty, narrates in Surah number 28, ayah number 9. And the heart of the mother of Moses became empty from every thought except the thought of Moses. She was very near to disclose his case, in other words, that the child was her son, had we not strengthened her heart with faith, so that she might remain as one of the believers. And she said to the sister of Moses, and I quote, "Follow him." End quote. So she, his sister, watched him for a far place secretly while they perceived not. And we had already forbidden other foster suckling mothers for him until his sister came up and said, "Shall I direct you to a household who will rear him for you? And sincerely, they will look after him in a good manner." End quote. So did we restore him to his mother, that she might be delighted, and that she might not grieve, and that she might know that the promise of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu is true, but most of them know not. End quote. As the child was put to her breast, she immediately started suckling. Pharaoh was astonished and asked, "Who are you?" This child was refused to take any other breast but yours. End quote. Had she told the truth, Pharaoh would have known that the child was an Israelite and would have killed Moses instantly. However, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu gave her inner strength, and she replied, "I am a woman of sweet milk and sweet smell, and no child refuses me." End quote. This answer satisfied Pharaoh. And yes, Hamaan also is another name. I've actually literally seen people, or I've seen an individual on social media. Hamaan. They call him Hamaan from Gambia. It's not. I don't think it's cool. I didn't really go there, but it's not cool naming children after Pharaoh and Hamaan or Haman, either or. Name the child after Abdullahi, Abdurrahman, after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the prophets, but naming them after Pharaoh and whatnot, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, it's practically naming Iblis. Name your child the devil. And so, devil, my son's name it's the same thing, because they were doing the works of devil, encouraging people to associate with Allah, which is the biggest crime. And the reason is because associating with Allah proves you don't know Him and you don't know yourself. Because if you knew the Creator, then you would never associate Him with any other, just like you would never say, or you would never have never be able, as a child, as a growing up in a home of parents, coming with other parents and saying, these are my parents. Okay, it's undoable, it's unthinkable. But we will have some time to discuss, because this very topic on, associating with Allah, because he does make a comparison, associating with him as the child saying to the parent, after being raised by the parent, after being taken care of by the parent, and everything that the parent does for the child gets to a point where they can do it all on their own, and they say the most ridiculous things to their parents. In fact, they will take others to be dearer and nearer to them than their parent, and or their parents. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he makes that correlation. You would not, what could that be righteous, that you did that to your parent? That would be a serious crime, wouldn't it? And that's a human crime. Very rampant here in America. Subhanallah. But that wouldn't be logically righteous. It wouldn't be logically right. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, or where you decide to travel in the world to make a wrong right. It still is wrong if it's wrong. Now, what's going to happen is, again, he's saying this is what you can see. You can actually see your parents, and you know that your parents exist. However, know that they were created. The Creator created them and created you. He loves you more than they love you, and he loves your parents more than their parents. He loves your parents more than your grandparents. So how is it is that you're able to understand that much and then say, there is better to follow than the way of Allah? That's, people now have really gone to it. But moving along now on page number 195. Had she took the truth, or had she given Pharaoh the correct answer? In other words, after Pharaoh said to her, you have been able to suckle this child that none other have been able to suckle, or this child has been able to accept your milk, your feed instead of the others. And she responded, saying, I am a woman of sweet milk and sweet smell, and no child refuses me. So from this day onward, she was appointed as Moses' wet nurse. She continued to breastfeed him for a long time. When he was bigger and was weaned, she was allowed the privilege of visiting him. Moses was raised in the palace as a prince. Jalla Jalaluhu says, and when he attained his full strength and was perfect in manhood, we bestowed on him hukum, meaning prophethood, right judgment of the affairs, and religious knowledge of the religion of his forefathers, meaning al-Islam. And thus do we reward the muhsinin, meaning the righteous doers, end quote. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu had granted Moses alayhi salatu wassalam good health, strength, knowledge, and wisdom. The weak and oppressed turned to him for protection and justice. One day in the main city he saw two men fighting. One was an Israelite who was being beaten by the other, an Egyptian. On seeing Moses, the Israelite begged him for help. Moses became involved in the dispute, and in a state of anger struck a heavy blow on the Egyptian, who died on the spot. Upon realizing that he had killed a human being, Moses' heart was filled with deep sorrow, and immediately he begged Allah Jalla Jalaluhu for forgiveness. He had not intended to kill the man. He pleaded with Almighty Allah Jalla Jalaluhu for forgiveness, and he felt a sense of peace filling his whole being. Thereafter Moses began to show more patience and sympathy towards people. The next day he saw the same Israelite involved in another fight. Moses went to him and said, open quote, you seem to be a quarrelsome fellow. You have a new quarrel with one person or another each day, end quote. Fearing that Moses might strike him, the Israelite warned Moses, open quote, would you kill me as you killed the wretched yesterday, end quote. The Egyptian with whom the Israelite was fighting overheard this remark and reported Moses to the authorities. Soon thereafter, as Moses was passing through the city, a man approached and alerted him, open quote, O Moses, the chiefs have taken counsel against you. You are to be tried and killed. I would advise you to escape. Inshallah, we will end it here on page number 197. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسم ربك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.